Story 1. I worked in a kitchen where people have been fired for cell phone use. I personally don't use my phone at work at all. The boss's daughter is on the phone all the time. After good employees were fired for the same action, I started annoyingly and loudly calling the daughter out every time she was on her phone. Now, I was fired this week because of my rude actions. Story 2. When a bully picks on someone, often it goes on for months and months with no one stepping in until the victim snaps. But then, when the victim finally snaps and retaliates against the bully, suddenly everyone comes out of the woodwork to step in and then admonish the victim for retaliating instead of doing the more civilized thing and asking an authority figure for help. In my opinion, the bully shouldn't have provoked trouble, and everything that happens afterward is primarily on them. The victim should do whatever is necessary to stop the harassment, period. Even violence or humiliation if that's what it takes. No one will ever convince me otherwise. If you sat on the sidelines before, you don't get to suddenly take the moral high ground now. For whatever reason, we seem to have higher expectations for victims than we do for bullies, and I don't understand why. I do not expect patience, maturity, compassion, or professionalism from the victim. This goes for both physical and verbal altercations. Of course, we should be teaching people to ask for help, but we should be primarily teaching them not to bully and insult others. No means no and stop means stop, period. Story 3. Playing video games for a couple of hours is considered undesirable and a waste of time. But watching a film or several episodes of a television show is deemed socially acceptable and a good way to relax. Story 4. White-collar crimes and blue-collar crimes that do equivalent harm aren't treated the same when it comes to punishment. A blue-collar criminal robs a bank for $1 million and receives 10 years in jail. A white-collar criminal embezzles $1 million from a bunch of pensioners and gets 1 year in jail and a fine. A blue-collar criminal poisons an entire family and receives a life sentence in prison. A white-collar criminal ignores safety regulations in food or medicine, and as a result, an entire family is poisoned. They receive a fine. Punishment should be based on the harm done, not the method. Story 5. When it comes to businesses, everyone loves to say, well, it's a company. It's their job to make money as efficiently as possible, and it's treated as smart and effective. But when it comes to employees, if they want to make as much money as possible for the least amount of work, they're treated as lazy and incompetent. Everyone acts like it's a crime for a company to make less in profits than it did a year before, even though they are still making more money than they are spending. But employees shouldn't demand more money because the business wouldn't make as much profit. Story 6. These are opposite sides of the same unfortunate coin. Don't misunderstand me, but disabled child? Oh, how cute. Such a brave little warrior. So strong. Such a hero in the face of a truly miserable existence. This video of a boy learning how to ask the deaf girl to prom in American Sign Language is so inspirational. I'm not crying, you're crying. He's such a good person, so inclusive. He was definitely raised right. Disabled adult? This grown man I know started a GoFundMe to have a ramp installed in front of his house. I'm not wasting my hard-earned money on something he should be able to do himself. He doesn't even need a wheelchair. I saw him walking perfectly fine 3 years ago. What a joke. People like him need to figure out how to adapt instead of demanding that the rest of us cater to them. I did it. When I was on crutches for 2 weeks, I used the stairs because I'm not some lazy, miserable weirdo. Story 7. I work nights. I dislike that all the programs my union provides start in the morning. Want to learn more about leadership in the union? It starts at 8 a.m. Want to learn more about negotiations? Sorry, it starts at 8 a.m. Do you have a complaint? Call me after 9 a.m. I pay the same rates as the day crew and want nighttime programs. Story 8. Many people in this thread have provided examples of the unfair double standards involved with gender. So, I'm just going to paint in broad strokes and say, gender issues. Story 9. Do not want to answer the phone because you think it is rude that someone demands your immediate attention, but fly off the handle if someone does not respond to your text within 3 nanoseconds. Story 10. Society's view on most types of abuse. If you do this to your partner, it's domestic violence. If you do this to your child, It's responsible parenting. Story 11. In movies, shows, and others, you can find countless examples of a woman being mad at a man, so she slaps him across the face, and they move on like it never happened. What's more, it's always the man's fault he got slapped, because he made this woman mad at him. Story 12. The biggest double standard is whenever I use facts and logic to justify everything I believe in, but then, when I ask them for their beliefs, they do not use any logic at all. Story 13. The prettier a woman is, the more men want her, regardless of her other qualities. The richer a man is, the more women want him, regardless of his other qualities. Story 14. Medication for mental health versus physical health. Are you depressed? You don't need pills. Just go outside. Okay, Karen. Then stop taking those blood thinners for your clotting problem. All you really need to do is go suntan. Story 15. There seems to be a lot of plus-sized women who think they can insult skinny women just because they were insulted by some other skinny woman in their past. There's no sense in taking your insecurities out on someone who has nothing to do with it. Story 16. When women are constantly said to be too emotional, in a way that conveys they're inferior, yet men will lose a video game and break things in a screaming rage, but that's not considered too emotional. Rage is, in fact, an emotion, guys. Story 17. Female child predators not receiving the same punishment as male predators. Recently, I read about a case where a middle school teacher was caught sending inappropriate photos to a student, and the case concluded with a plea deal. She was given a deferred 2-year sentence along with 2 years of probation, without any requirement to be on the sex offender registration. She lost her job, but I can't help but feel that a male predator committing the exact same act would have faced a more severe punishment. Story 18. The expectation that men should be stoic and never show emotion, but when they do open up, they are often told to man up or not be so sensitive. It is a lose-lose situation. Story 19. Discussing your weight insecurities, whether you're overweight, underweight, or at a healthy weight, often feels as though you're only permitted to be insecure or openly discuss body dysmorphia if you're overweight. In reality, everyone should have the opportunity to express their frustrations or join support groups without the stigma that someone else has it worse. Story 20. My dad refers to all women as girls, regardless of their age. However, if you refer to him or any other male over the age of 18 as a boy, he goes off the handle. He's not the only one. Why is it okay to refer to me, a woman in her 40s and a professional, as a girl? Story 21. Men can get vasectomies relatively easily, but women asking for tubal ligation repeatedly get told, "Oh, but you might change your mind. You're too young to make that decision." For that matter, choosing to be child-free is generally more accepted in men than in women. Story 22. Us ladies can physically assault men in public, but if he tries to defend himself or fight back, then he's labeled the aggressor. No, honey, that's called equal rights, which you keep complaining about. If a woman assaults a man, I wholeheartedly expect him to respond with an open hand using half his strength to smack her a single time, then walk away. How dare you condone violence against women? No, I grew up abused by my mother, older sister, and grandmother. The single slap with half one's strength and walking away sets the standard. Hit me, that's fine, but I'm going to strike back with restraint because it's not your fault nobody taught you better. A man who doesn't defend himself when a woman is beating on him does so out of fear that he will be seen as the abuser. Depp versus Heard was an amazing example of this, as normal women, even those claiming to be abused, do not act in such extreme and unacceptable ways towards their partner. That is considered extreme misconduct and a sign of deeply troubling behavior. Story 23. 2 things I find just highly hypocritical. It's considered perfectly normal and reasonable to want a tall man, ask a man his height, or even shame or talk down on men for their height, for some a source of insecurity they have no control over. However, wanting a slim woman, while widely considered normal, can already net you your superficial treatment. Asking a woman her weight is considered rude and a no-go, and shaming a woman for her weight or talking down on her because of it is rightfully considered horrendously insensitive. In this case, it's a source of insecurity they technically have control over. My stance here is you can have preferences, but don't make it all about them. If it's a deal breaker for you, rather than hitting a person where they might be insecure, it may be better to just stay silent in that regard and separate amicably. Judging or talking about penises and ridiculing them for their size is prevalent, widely tolerated, and often considered funny or banter rather than offensive. Judging or talking about vaginas and ridiculing them for their size or form is considered perverted, rude, and offensive most of the time. My stance is, just don't make fun of people, especially not about something they cannot change. If you make fun of your own genitals or breasts, be my guest, but be a bit more considerate towards others. Now, there are exceptions to both of my examples, but for the most part, and particularly online and in the media, they are accurate. Story 24. Religious people hold their own religion to a completely different standard than everyone else's. For example, a Christian calling out the Quran for inconsistencies but ignoring them in the Bible. Story 25. I am 100% on board with Me Too in love when individuals get canceled for being terrible human beings. However, it's not okay when women grab me or my friends at a bar, and perpetrators should be punished equally. I've seen it and had it happen, and the way it's just laughed off is unacceptable. Story 26. Single mothers are often blamed for everything from the federal debt to the crime rate. They are called used or damaged goods and considered undateable. There are lengthy discussions about why and how single mothers are damaging society, and suggestions that fathers should automatically be given custody, despite most men not wanting this responsibility. However, there are no negative social repercussions for men who completely abandon their own children. None. Not at all. Zero. On the other hand, single fathers are praised as heroes and given a ton of support, even if they are just every other weekend dads or were abusive or subpar spouses, which is why their marriage ended in the first place. Story 27. Every female partner I've had says they want a man to be open and vulnerable. Once I act that way, it is used against me. They leave me for a real man, or I'm treated as if I'm incapable. Every man I know has the same experience. Story 28. No one will love a person who does not love themselves. That is nonsense. Those are the people who need love the most. When I get out of here, I am going after whoever made that rule. I will slay a god. Story 29. Men with less muscle aren't seen as feminine, but women who work out a lot and get buff are often mocked with comments like, "Why are you trying to be a man? Excuse me, none of your business." Story 30. Women going on about how much men are not good with men around them that they choose to be around. Not only are generalizations illogical, but speaking from personal experience, a man making a generalization about women is often met with some pretty aggressive pushback. Honestly, the whole gender wars issue makes no sense to me and is frustrating. Story 31. What happened during the Olympics? News headlines about athletes' manhood, with zoomed-in pictures of bulges and possible visible panty lines, were literally everywhere. But, God forbid if we mentioned anything similar about the female athletes. Story 32. A child gets harassed at school? Somehow it's their fault for letting them do it, and they should just ignore their harassers. If an adult were to do the same to another adult, we see restraining orders and lawsuits filed. Story 33. The rules for the not for me. I hear too many complaints from women about their men who they chose. Hello? Those same things they complain about are exactly the same things she's doing. I point it out, and her answer is always, "But it's different." I push back and say it's not. Then all of a sudden, I'm labeled a pick-me for calling out their hypocrisy. I'm of the mind that if you expect things from others, you need to be able to reciprocate those things as well. If not, it isn't fair to ask people to do things when you can't even do them or uphold them yourself. Story 34. If a woman hits you, no one will do anything. However, if a man raises his voice a little, he is already considered a danger. That if a father kills or rapes his children, he is an irredeemable monster. But if the mother does it, she is a victim of depression, or people question what the children did to her. That people think they are humanitarian just for putting a sweater on a dog. Yet you see them despising children and other people, saying animals are worth more than people. May the United States always give political asylum to the corrupt from other countries like in Ecuador, but they act as enemies of Nicolas Maduro when they give asylum to individuals who are just as guilty as him. Story 35. The belief that men cannot be raped, abused, or sexually harassed by women is incorrect. I know several men who have experienced these, and I have been touched without consent as well. Additionally, male body image issues and other insecurities are very often overlooked or completely dismissed. Story 36. The double standard with disabled people. Fully able person. Rowdy and loud and won't be quiet? Shout at them to shut up. But if I calmly tell a person with Down syndrome to please quiet down as they're shouting while I'm directly next to them, that's considered ableist. I've experienced it before, and not only is it annoying, but the guilt hurts. Like, I'm not telling her to be quiet because she's disabled. I'm telling her to be quiet because she's being very loud and it hurts my head. Story 37. People who are against student loan forgiveness but are okay with everyone paying for everyone's health insurance while using the example, college was a choice. You didn't have to go, well, Karen, smoking cigarettes every day for 57 years was a choice too. One I didn't make.